The stage lights of the theater glowed softly, washing the polished floor in gold and blue as the audience murmured with anticipation. It was another audition day, another long lineup of hopefuls waiting for their moment on the biggest stage of their lives. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his expression calm but distant. He had seen thousands of auditions across continents, heard voices from every corner of the world, and learned to recognize patterns quickly. Most performances revealed themselves within seconds. Some were good, many were forgettable, very few were unforgettable. On this day, he had no idea that a series of Filipino performances would slowly dismantle every wall he had built, from the very first note to the final standing ovation. The first contestant walked out quietly, almost shyly, bowing slightly toward the judges and the audience. He was a young Filipino man, dressed simply, his hands trembling as he introduced himself. His accent was soft, his voice barely above a whisper as he explained that he worked long hours at a small roadside eatery back home, saving money just to be here. Simon nodded politely, already preparing himself for what he assumed would be another decent but unremarkable audition. The music began, just a gentle piano. And then the singer opened his mouth. The sound that came out was not what anyone expected. It was deep, rich, and emotionally charged, carrying years of struggle and hope in a single breath. The first note hung in the air, pure and steady, and something shifted instantly in the room. Simon leaned forward without realizing it. The audience went silent, as if afraid to break the spell. The singer's voice grew stronger, weaving pain and resilience together so naturally it felt less like a performance and more like a confession. Every lyric seemed to come from a place far deeper than technique. It came from life. As the song built, the camera caught Simon's face. His usual skepticism had softened into surprise. He wasn't just listening, he was absorbing. The singer's eyes closed as he reached the chorus, his voice cracking ever so slightly, not from weakness but from emotion. That crack made it real. It made it human. By the time the final note faded, there was a split second of stunned silence before the theater erupted. The audience rose to their feet, applause crashing like a wave. Simon stood as well, clapping slowly at first, then with genuine admiration. It wasn't just a standing ovation, it was a moment of recognition. One voice, one story, had cut through everything. As the contestant wiped tears from his eyes, Simon spoke. His words were simple, but they carried weight. He said that from the first note, he felt something honest, something rare. He said he would remember that audition for a long time. The young man nodded, barely able to speak, as his dream took its first real step forward. That performance alone would have made the day memorable, but it was only the beginning. Later that afternoon, another Filipino contestant stepped onto the stage, this time a woman in her early 40s. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her posture straight, her smile gentle. She explained that she was a mother of 3, that she sang while cleaning houses to make the workdays feel lighter. Simon listened, respectful but guarded. Life stories were common, talent was not. The music started, a familiar classic, one that had been sung countless times before. Simon raised an eyebrow, already concerned. Familiar songs were dangerous. They invited comparison. But then she sang. Her voice was warm and powerful, with a control that spoke of years of singing not for fame, but for survival. She didn't try to impress with runs or tricks. Instead, she focused on meaning. Each word landed clearly, intentionally. The song transformed in her hands, becoming less about melody and more about message. The audience leaned in. Some began to cry quietly. Simon's eyes didn't leave her for a second. Halfway through, the emotion in the room was undeniable. The singer's voice soared effortlessly, filling the theater, wrapping every listener in a shared feeling of longing and hope. When she reached the final line, she held the note just long enough to let it resonate, then released it gently, like letting go of a heavy burden. Silence followed again, deeper this time, heavier. Then applause, not explosive, but reverent, as if everyone needed a moment to breathe. Simon stood, his expression unreadable but intense. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than usual. He said that he had heard that song many times, but never like that. He said her performance reminded him why music mattered in the first place. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she bowed, overwhelmed not just by praise, but by being truly seen. For Simon, it was another reminder that greatness didn't always come from polished stages or expensive training. Sometimes, it came from kitchens, from streets, from lives lived fully and honestly. As the day moved on, the pattern continued. Another Filipino act, this time a group of siblings, walked out together. They were young, nervous, their matching smiles betraying their anxiety. They explained that their father had taught them to sing before he passed away, that music was how they stayed connected to him. Simon listened quietly, his jaw tightening slightly. The story touched something personal, though he didn't show it. The siblings took their places, harmonizing as the music began. From the first harmony, it was clear they had something special. Their voices blended seamlessly, each one supporting the other. There was no ego, no competition between them. Just unity. The harmonies were tight, emotional, and surprisingly mature. Simon watched closely, tapping his finger against the desk. As the song progressed, the emotion built naturally, their voices rising and falling together like waves. The audience reacted audibly this time, gasps and murmurs breaking through the silence. When the siblings reached the bridge, one of them stepped forward for a solo line. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied, growing stronger with each word. Simon's eyes softened. He knew that kind of courage. He had seen it before, but never lost respect for it. When they came back together for the final chorus, the harmony hit perfectly, filling the room with a sense of love and loss that was impossible to ignore. The moment the song ended, the audience leapt to their feet. This time, the applause was immediate and thunderous. Simon stood again, shaking his head in disbelief, a small smile forming. He said that their connection was undeniable, that their voices together were more powerful than any single performance he could imagine. He told them their father would be proud. At that, the siblings broke down, hugging each other as tears flowed freely. It was no longer just a competition. It was something deeper. As evening approached, fatigue began to show on the judges' faces, but something had changed in Simon. His posture was more alert now, his eyes brighter. The Filipino auditions had awakened something in him, reminded him that surprise still existed, that magic could still appear when least expected. When the next contestant walked out, an elderly Filipino man with silver hair and trembling hands, Simon leaned forward immediately, curious. The man spoke slowly, explaining that he had waited his whole life to sing on a stage like this, that he had spent decades working manual labor jobs, singing only to himself at night. Simon listened intently. The music started, and the man began to sing a song from his youth, his voice weathered but full of soul. It wasn't perfect. There were rough edges, moments where age showed. But there was also truth, depth, and a lifetime of experience in every note. The audience responded differently this time. Instead of silence, there was a quiet warmth, a collective respect. Simon's eyes glistened slightly as he listened. He wasn't judging technique anymore. He was listening to a life. When the man finished, he bowed deeply, unsure of how it had been received. The applause started slowly, then grew, until everyone was standing again. Simon stood last, but when he did, it meant everything. He spoke honestly, saying that perfection was overrated, that what mattered was authenticity. He said the man's performance reminded him that it was never too late to chase a dream. The elderly singer smiled through tears, nodding again and again, as if trying to memorize every second. For Simon, it was another moment added to a growing list of auditions he would never forget. By the end of the day, it was clear that something extraordinary had happened. It wasn't just one performance, or even two. It was a wave of Filipino talent that carried heart, humility, and power in equal measure. From young dreamers to seasoned souls, each performer brought something uniquely human to the stage. They didn't sing to impress. They sang to express, and that made all the difference. As the judges gathered their things, Simon remained seated for a moment, looking out at the empty stage. He had been stunned before in his career, but days like this were rare. Days that reminded him why he started. Music wasn't about ego or competition. It was about connection. And on this stage, through these voices from the Philippines, that connection had been undeniable. From the first note to the final standing ovation, those performances had done more than blow Simon Cowell away. They had reminded everyone watching that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places, carried by voices shaped not just by talent, but by life itself.